Hello and welcome. This week I've been sharing a variety of ideas and ways to use some of those papers that we have that are scenic or maybe kind of busy and we're not really just not sure what to do with them with our card projects. We purchase them because they're really pretty, but then you see that scene or something that's kind of busy and you're just not really sure, what do I do with that? I don't want to cover up the whole scene, but I don't want to just put this straight on a card base and be done. So I've had a few different formulas that I've shared all week. I'll link the playlist below so that you can go back and watch those. Today's formula, as I'm calling them, is a spotlight die cut. So kind of like if you know what spotlight stamping is, it's where you take a big, kind of a big stamp and stamp it down, but maybe only color a portion of it, so that the rest is kind of black and white, but just a little spotlight of it is colored or painted or something like that. That's kind of the same concept with this spotlight die cutting. So I've taken one of these papers. This is the Splendid Autumn collection from a couple years ago. This is the Beautiful Gallery collection that is currently available with Stampin' Up. And both of these I think are really pretty. I saw this paper in particular and I thought, well, I'm just really not sure, what should I do with this for a card? But, if you kind of think about if I were to just kind of pick a portion of it, how could I, kind of focus on that and have that be the spotlight or the focus of my card. So I decided to take a circle die cut and just pick a portion of the scene that I really liked, and I die cut that kind of as the spotlight. Now it almost looks like you're standing back here on a hill looking down into this little valley where there's a river kind of running through there at this cute little village along the shore. And I added just a few just kind of plain die cuts, nothing bold and flashy, and a little sentiment. Now, earlier in the week, I did recommend not mixing and matching a busy background paper like this with another patterned paper. However, something like this that I used, it's pretty subtle. It's kind of a tone on tone, and I thought that really worked well with this kind of spotlight technique. It gives a little interest to the background, but it wasn't so busy and, kind of, busy and colorful that it took away from the main part of the image. So then I did the same concept with this paper from Splendid Autumn with these really pretty sunflowers on it. But what I actually did with this one was when I cut that circle, I flipped the paper over and used the back of it as the main part of the card. So you can see it's this kind of more solid, a little bit of a texture look, and the flower on the front. So that's kind of a fun way to get a couple different uses out of this paper, not just a circle of it, but then I flipped the whole thing over, and where I cut the circle from, if you can see that, that's where I actually then inlaid this circle and popped it up on dimensionals. I didn't do that with this one purely because it was a completely different scene on the back, and I didn't think that would, mix and match very well. So that was my reasoning there. But I'm going to show you another sample of doing this with a different paper. This is from this Beautiful Gallery set, and it's this really pretty kind of a rose bush, part of a rose bush with some printing, some text down on the bottom, and then the back is just kind of a really textured kind of paint look. And I thought we could probably do that same concept with this, where we take a circle, kind of spotlight part of it, and then flip it over and use this as the background of the card. So let's get started with that. So the first thing I always do when deciding to use just a portion of a paper that's, kind of that scene or something big like this where it's a rose bush, is kind of just look around and decide, what part, is there a part of it that I like more than the rest? Is there, kind of my favorite part of it? Or I decide, well, what shape am I going to use to cut it? In this scenario, I do want to use a circle. I picked a little bit smaller one, and then I'm just going to kind of move this around and see, okay, if I use this to cut, you know, what's going to be left and how much are my, you know, how big of borders do I have left? What's going to work for this if I want to use this as my formula for this particular piece of paper? So what I was thinking with this one is I'm going to kind of come over here and get these roses and some of these leaves. And now that might look a little lopsided, but to kind of add to that, from earlier this week, I continued to talk about adding some, you know, die cuts in just plain cardstock. So I have these leaves from yesterday's video. I think that I could probably kind of bring those along the side there, along with a little banner with my sentiment on it. I could bring that in, and that kind of pulls that cream color from the roses, kind of pulls that over to this side of the circle. And I think that will be a really nice balance. I feel like the leaves give a kind of a landing place for the sentiment strip to be, so it won't just be kind of hanging out, you know, in the air by itself, and it'll be just kind of a nice little area to tuck that in along the side of our die cut. Okay, so I've made the decision. I am going to cut the circle from this portion of the card, and what I want to do first is cut this panel down so that it fits my card base or whatever I'm using as you know, the base that this is going to go onto. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's Mossy Meadow. I'm going to just use this to put on the front of a card base. So I'm going to be cutting this down to probably 4 inches by 5 1/4. I think that'll be a nice size and still give enough room, enough border on on the sides of the circle, you know, so that it won't go all the way out to the edge. That'll give us a nice border around the side there. So I'll grab my paper trimmer. And since I'm going to be cutting this down, I can't really keep all those nice borders. I really like that detail, but for this one, it's just not going to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut that top off. And then that helps me know where I can now cut the rest of the length. So we want 5 1/4. Actually, I'm going to go just a 1 notch bigger since I can. Okay. And then I think, let me just bring this back in. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball. My 0 is here, 4 1/4 is over here. I think if I just trim right on the side of that little line detail, that should give me enough room over on this side for the width that I want. So I'll flip that around, and we were going to do 4, but I'm going to go 1 notch more, just like I did on the height. And there we go. This now is kind of our main focal point. I'm going to center this circle on here and hold it on with a couple of pieces of some low tack tape, and I'm going to go run that through my die cut machine. Okay, so here is that piece. I'm going to take the tape off of here. And we're going to save this part. That's the part we'll flip over. And there's our nice little die cut. And we can, you know, actually turn this any way that we want. Okay. So let's take our base piece of that Mossy Meadow. I'm going to flip this part over. We'll use the back of that piece of Designer Series paper. And then this is where we're going to place that little rose bush in there. And technically you could turn this if you wanted to. Maybe I'll even turn it just a little bit like that. And then I'll probably trim some of these leaves off, but I'll bring those leaves in like that. And then that little sentiment banner, I think that'll work. So let's go ahead and get our adhesive on here. Okay. There we go. And then I'm going to pop this up on some dimensionals. All right, and let's see here. Put this here. There we go. So really the basic gist of our card is done. That's spotlight die cutting. And I'm just going to add my couple little, I'm not going to stamp a sentiment on there yet, but you'll get the idea. I will just grab our glue here. Okay, and I'm just going to put one dimensional on the back of here just so that we get the idea. Because I don't have a sentiment picked out, but I wanted to basically just give you the idea. Oh, and then I picked up my and there we go. Super quick and easy, but this turned out really pretty. It's a fun way to be able to use both the front and back of some of those busier papers like that. Do a little bit of die or spotlight die cutting. I'll bring those other two back in so you can see the other ideas here. And then I'm just really quick gonna run back through the other ideas that I shared this week. The first formula that I shared was adding a big bold border to break up that, that pattern, that scene. The second idea I had was to keep a big portion of the scene, but to add a little frame and some die cuts around it. The third idea that I shared was to do some sort of a fun fold or like a shaped card. To me, that's kind of a fun fold because it's something different than just an A2 size card. Some sort of a fun fold where you're using that big pretty image, but kind of cutting it up a little differently. Okay. And then tonight, of course, or today, is doing a little bit of a spotlight die cutting. So I hope that you got a lot of ideas, you know, some things that you can kind of take forward as you work with these busier papers, these scenic papers that kind of stump us once in a while. I hope that you've, you know, picked up a few little tips and tricks and you can go forward in using some of those things. Now, I do have one more video that's going to come out. It's actually going to be a scrapbook page. And, you know, I hope that I can share a couple more ideas, whether you're a scrapbooker or not. I think I have, you know, a couple things that might pertain to whether you're a card maker or a scrapbooker. So watch for that to come out tomorrow. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.